All right. Welcome to Harlem Emergency Network Coronavirus Update. I'm Bob Ponce, and we try to do these updates weekly to keep you in touch with what's going on with the COVID-19 virus in our city in general, and in particular in Harlem, Upper Manhattan, and the Bronx. So we're going to start out by looking at some of the latest numbers. Bear with me a second as I bring it up on the screen so that we can see what's going on here in our city. So, start out by looking at data, and this data is from New York City Department of Health. You can find it on nyc.gov/COVID-19. And so one of the things that we are glad to see is that the rates of COVID cases, hospitalization, and deaths have been steadily declining over the last month. If you can see this chart we're looking at, we can see that the peak was at April 6th, and then it's been steadily declining. And this right now we're looking at cases. Let's take a quick look at hospitalization rates. And as you can see, around the same time, April 6th, we were looking at almost 1,700 hospitalizations a day. Right now, we've seen this go down to below 100 a day. And so that's a really huge decline, and obviously a great information for us in terms of overall COVID-19 in our city. And this also is the death rate, which also peaked around April 7th. And you can see this has been steadily declining as we've gone into May. Now, that's the good news. But we want to obviously be on guard for reoccurrences of COVID-19. And as the weather has gotten warm, we know that people have been coming back out per se. And so we want to look also at some other data that the city uses to keep track of where we are. So bear with me as I bring that up. Okay. So on our previous broadcast, we've talked about this before, but if you haven't heard it, the city has 3 what they call public health milestones that they use to judge as to when social distancing restrictions will be lifted for people who are not at high risk. Those 3 milestones are hospital admissions, critical care capacity, and positive test rates. So we're going to look at them one by one. Let's start with hospital admissions. So, no, that's still testing hospital admissions. Okay. So what the city is looking at is that they set these standards early on where they wanted to see us below 200 hospital admissions a day for at least a period of 10 days. And we have met and exceeded that. And so right now, as of May 4th, the hospital admissions is 109. So we've been very firmly below 200 for at least 12 or 13 days. But here's something that we have to keep an eye on is, as you can see, this green line is the hospital admissions number, and it kind of moves around from day to day, but as you can see, from May 3rd to May 4th, it spiked up. From May 3rd, it was 77, and it spiked up to 109. And so we want to be careful about looking at this number, because as the weather has gotten warm and you're seeing more and more people coming out, and a lot of people are not paying attention to social distancing, not wearing masks. And we want to be very, very much on guard for a reoccurrence and seeing the numbers go back up again. And so that's why we keep a strict eye on that particular category. So again, this is our COVID-19 report for May 6, 2020. You may be watching this either on Facebook Live or YouTube. And so the next thing we want to talk about is what's going on in our respective neighborhoods. And as you're aware, we've been very, very consistent with looking at not just the overall numbers, but looking at what's going on in our neighborhoods from a zip code basis. And so we're going to take a look at the zip code map. And so all of the spots that are in dark purple represent areas that have the highest incidence of COVID-19. In Harlem, it is 1029, which is East Harlem. We thought the numbers backed down for a second, but as we can see on this chart, it is still clearly the most impacted area in Harlem. And so we want people to understand that this map is available and it's updated on a regular basis on nyc.gov/COVID-19. And so it's important as we look at, are we coming back out again, that we know what's going on in our own communities. We've talked about the Bronx, and as you can see with the Bronx, almost a majority of the zip codes in the Bronx are in purple. And so the Bronx really has a serious incidence of COVID-19 throughout the borough. There are a handful of spots where it's lesser, but virtually all of the zip codes in the Bronx are either dark purple or a lighter purple, which means it's still high, but not quite as high. So this is something to be aware of. If you're in one of these zip codes, you obviously want to be talking to your elected officials in terms of what's going on, and making sure that our voices are heard in terms of resources that need to be allocated to the areas that are hardest hit. And this is a criticism that many of us have had with some of the city and state responses, is that, when they came up with testing facilities and additional facilities, they were seated downtown, where there's been a lot less incidence of COVID-19. As you can see, as we look at Lower Manhattan, there's only one zip code that is even in a light purple below 96th Street, and that is way downtown, 10002. And the rest of Manhattan has not been nearly as hard hit as Upper Manhattan, the Bronx, Queens, Brooklyn, and even Staten Island. You see much higher incidence in terms of the hot spots for COVID-19. So we want people to continue to be aware as you're making decisions. We did a video, is it safe to go outside, where we went in greater detail. We can give you kind of the high points of that right now. And what we told people is, first of all, if you're making the decision, is it safe to go outside? The first thing you want to do is know yourself. What are your own particular profile in terms of health and in terms of age as to whether it's safe to go outside. If you have chronic illnesses, if you have autoimmune deficiencies, or if you're over the age of 60, you want to be more careful. Um, the second thing we as we just mentioned is know your area. And so that's why we show people the zip code maps so that you can know exactly what's going on. Because if you're on social media and you're looking at and we're joined here by Carol Johnson. Carol, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, we hear you, but we don't see you, but you're with us and you're on the live broadcast. And I was reiterating some of the things that we reiterated in the past about knowing yourself, knowing your area, and of course, continuing to practice safety protocols. Um, and I just went through some of the numbers and, encouraging people to watch the numbers. One of the things we saw as we went back. Uh, okay, hold on. We lost Carol. We're going to try to bring her back in. So yeah, Carol. So one of the things that we saw in today's numbers is that even though we are still below 200 in terms of new hospitalizations, we did see a jump between yesterday and the day before in hospitalizations. We haven't. We're still way under 200, but the fact is, we want to keep an eye on that number to see that we're not seeing a new rash of reinfections as a result of people coming out and basically being stir crazy and trying to enjoy the good weather.
Absolutely, Bob. Thanks for having this broadcast again. But, let's not get caught up in the hype.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen major plagues. We've seen, if we look back in history, the Spanish flu.
Mm-hmm.
It was a major wave. And
Yes.
then the first one, maybe 2 million people died.
Mm-hmm.
Then the second wave, 50 million or more people died.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're looking at these hot spots, let's keep in mind that already these are the hottest spots.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of testing taking place.
Right.
It's the hottest with minimal testing.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine how many people actually can carry this virus.
Mm-hmm.
And while you're running out in the street, I know you have to get out, but the fact that if you don't social distance, you don't maintain those protocols, you have
Mm-hmm.
no idea who you're bringing it home to.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you live alone, then I guess you're fine.
Yep.
But your family, your mother, your father, your children, your wife, your husband, or
Mm-hmm.
significant other, you have no idea. And keep in mind that there's a lot of people that are asymptomatic.
Mm-hmm.
And this thing has so many different levels. They're looking at the antibodies. Some people have strong antibodies. Some
Mm-hmm.
people have weak antibodies. Some have moderate antibodies. But there is no clear description in terms of whom has what.
Mm-hmm.
So the testing is now coming to those hottest spots. Just hang in there a little bit longer. Because the bottom line is there's no reversing the hearse.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Exactly.
um,
Exactly.
and you've got, a lot of people are living with elders. They can't take this. Just age alone is a major factor.
Yeah.
And I don't want young people to get caught up in the hype either. In the beginning, remember it was said that only seniors with underlying issues were dying.
Mm-hmm.
But the doctor that was first involved with this was what, 35?
Right.
People
Mm-hmm.
forgot about that.
Yep.
And then later on, the numbers started going down. The next person was like 58,
Mm-hmm.
68. Then it went down into the 40s. And now you have children. You've got 16-year-olds dying from COVID.
Right.
A baby died
Mm-hmm.
one day before its 5th-month birthday.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not something that you can turn around.
Mm-hmm.
You need you to take extra precautions now. And as long as it's getting warmer, I know we've already been on lockdown during the cooler areas, so now people are going stir crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
please, please, if you don't have to go out, don't go out. If you
Mm-hmm.
must go out, make sure it's not even for your protection, it's for the protection of the people around you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Washing your hands.
And you brought up a good point when you talked about children, and you also talked about the fact that whatever we've heard, the information shifts because this is still a new virus and we're still learning. So, in particular, there was a story that came out yesterday, and I'm going to bring it up on the screen. Okay. All right. We're back.
All right. Technical difficulties.
Yeah, yes, yeah. We're trying new things, learning new things. So I'm not going to try to bring that story in. We'll just talk about it. 15 children have been hospitalized in New York with an illness that seems to be related or linked to COVID-19.
Yes.
It's something that was seen in the UK called Kawasaki syndrome, I believe,
Yes.
and it affects feet and skin. It's not necessarily life threatening, but it just is more to show us that that we're still trying to figure out all the effects of this disease. When it first came in, we were told it was just an upper respiratory disease, but since then we found that it can affect the kidneys and affect other systems in the body as well. So we're still learning and collecting data on this, and that is another reason why it's very, very important that all of us take precautions to not just jump to the conclusions that okay, it came and went, COVID came in, and now it's left town, you know, and everything is going to be just like it was. We have to be real with ourselves. Everything is not going to be like it was for a long time. And we're not even talking about the economic and social implications, but we're still strictly speaking about the medical challenge that's still in our community. I wanted to show a picture, and I'm going to show it on my tablet here and see if the screen can show it. This is from the 1918 epidemic, and this is a letter carrier for the post office. So it just shows that the more things change, the more they remain the same. When you see pictures from that era, you see a lot of people walking around wearing masks, and it's interesting how we seem to have forgotten some of the things that have come back that we've had to use. So back to where we were, basically.
Yeah, and not only
Yeah, you got a little bit of an echo. Okay, that seems
yeah,
better.
okay, and
So you have the both the phone and the okay, let's see. I think we can mute this. Okay, go ahead. Can we hear you? No, I don't hear you. Um, okay.
how's that?
Yeah. Still an echo.
It's an echo. Okay.
Let's try this. Okay. I see you, but we don't hear you. Okay. Can we hear you now? Talk.
Yes, I'm back.
Okay.
Are you still getting the echo?
Yes. Still getting the echo. Yes.
That's
Okay. Say something. Nope. All right, so we're having some challenges. We're trying to see if we can bring Carol back. We can see her. Carol, so you're on the phone now. Can we? Are you? Okay. Let's see. If this works. So we still have an echo.
okay. Let me just stay on audio.
Okay.
We tried, but that's just
Maybe if you turn your speaker down a little bit.
okay.
Okay,
Still
that's
an echo.
a little bit, but I
Let's
think
just
we
keep it on audio.
right. Okay.
So I'll come out of here.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, much better. So, one thing about COVID-19 is it taught us to adapt and deal with changing circumstances. So,
Absolutely. But you
mhm,
know what? Can I speak about something else? When they're saying that this thing has already started to mutate, the governor was on, I think it was 2 days ago, and I've been
mhm,
reading other reports where they're seeing like this thing has mutated twice already.
mhm,
Symptoms are changing.
mhm,
So at first it was the heavy cough, the hard, dry cough, and the persistent fever,
mhm,
um, and then aches, in the bones.
mhm,
And now you're hearing about people who are having blood clots,
mhm,
getting clots in the lungs. Now, I read an interesting story last night how one person had just major diarrhea,
mhm,
and it was so bad that they couldn't stand up. And every attempt to even move, they would just evacuate, would not be able to control their movements. And they had a form of pneumonia, and they were treated and was sent home. And when they went back again, this was still the only symptom that they had.
Mm-hmm.
The person was COVID-19 positive, and 8 days later they were dead.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of things here that's going on that and as long as they don't understand it, then we have to maintain that same thought. We don't understand it. It's not something you want to play with, because I'm telling you, this is like Russian roulette.
Mm-hmm.
I read another story about another mother who knows her son and his friends brought it back to the home. No one was there. And as much as she told him, you can't go back and forth and don't bring anybody else in the home, they're sneaking in the home. Now she's in the hospital.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
No.
so we can't emphasize this enough for young people. Even if you do not are not as much at risk on it, you are risking the lives and health of the elders and people with illnesses in your family if you're not practicing these protocols. So these are things that we've all got to live with and deal with to be able to get through this process and get through this crisis together. Other than that, I think we have no more new information for you. We will be back again next week, consistently at 9:30 on Wednesdays. We'll be doing this report, and we will also do intermittent reports if something is necessary for us to come back to. We will bring you that information. Also, keep checking on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Harlem Emergency Network, and the Harlem Emergency Network channel on YouTube, as we will continue to keep information out there. We did a video called "Is It Safe to Go Outside?" where we get into a little bit more depth of some of the things we talked about here. So you might want to check that out. And we will continue to come back to you with information on tuning up your immune system with nutrition-based alternatives in order to protect you against the virus. And we will keep you updated on other things as they come on board with regard to coronavirus. So on behalf of Carol Johnson, this is Bob Ponce for Harlem Emergency Network. Thank you for joining us. Stay safe and stay ready.